Wonderful. Here today, we're gonna get started on our meeting. I'm Katie Albright, I'm the chair, and we are grateful to be with you in Fresno. I would like to call order and announce the time. We're starting our meeting at 1:03. And if I could ask Ms. Hastings to call our roll. Thank you.
Katie Albright,
Present.
Jana Hayden,
Present.
Elsa Jimenez,
Present.
Jackie Majors,
Present.
Vivian Velasco Paz,
Present.
Lori Russo,
Present.
Melissa Stafford Jones.
Present. Thank you so much. If I could ask our executive director to introduce our Fresno partner, as well as lead our land development. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I actually want to invite Fabiola Gonzalez, who is our Fresno EC ED, but she will be introducing Cindy. To lead the land acknowledgement and a labor acknowledgement that they created here in Fresno. So
I'm gonna let her
thank you.
introduce herself. Cindy, go right ahead.
Buenas tardes. Hi, my name is Cindy Hernandez. I'm a Fresno native and I'm gonna read our land acknowledgement today. And share a little bit about who inhabited this place. We are presenting an in community while residing on the original homeland of the Yokuts and Mono nations. The Yokuts and Mono have stewarded these lands since time immemorial. The practice of acknowledging the lands of sovereign nations brings to the forefront their enduring connection to these lands, regardless of historical and current colonizational practices. We acknowledge that all inhabitants benefit from this land. So, something else that we just learned recently during some rating training that we did is a labor acknowledgement. So we're going to go ahead and also read this labor acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the foundation of the United States was built by free and forced labor of Black people of Africa, the African diaspora, and Black people indigenous to this land. This foundation has generational and exponential effects that continue to negatively impact Black communities today and remain uncompensated. The historical and contemporary contributions of the Black diaspora continues to shape American culture and benefit all inhabitants of this land.
Thank you so much. And so important, the words that you speak. I'd like to provide just a brief overview for our meeting today. Certainly agendas are on the side table as well, posted on our website. We are going to have 3 information items, including a financial update, an update on the Bagu-Keene Act and some recent provisions around that, and a discussion about the Commission's advisory committee and structure. We'll also have 2 action items, media campaign and the kit for new parents investments. And so those are the goals of our meeting. A couple of housekeeping items to discuss. I am going to request of my commissioners that we put our closed session at the end of our meeting to allow for ample discussion for that. I also wanted to let everyone know and acknowledge that if any of the items presented on today's agenda or that we may present have a conflict of interest for you, please let us know. Obtaining this information in advance will certainly ensure that I can make announcements about your non-participation in any aspect of that item in compliance with applicable laws. So let me ask my fellow commissioners, does anyone have or want to state a conflict of interest on any of the items? Seeing none, thank you so much, and we will proceed. I will turn it over to Director Wong. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Albright, and thank you so much for having us back here in February. We were invited, hosted by Fresno First, by California, for a conversation regarding the Black community. What a beautiful labor acknowledgement the really hard and intentional work that you're doing here. Just really just honored from even last night at Arte America, and just really just the experience yesterday, being rooted in community and families and healing through art. That was just a really powerful experience for many of us as I still kind of process what that is and what you're building here. Many of you across the state are building with First Five locally in your networks. And this morning, the tour of the Lighthouse, and what a lighthouse it is. What a beacon of hope, being centered in the needs of families and babies and communities. I know every single county, all 58 of you, do that, really rooted in your own ways, and just grateful and humble that you all have invited us into your space and allowed us to see that. And so really, there is so much for me. I'm going to use the word joy, especially when we shall not name several people sliding down the slides and just experiencing that with our community and our babies and our families. And so with that said, I'm going to kind of launch into with gratitude. I have my Frida earring from last night, so just kind of that spirit of empowerment and community throughout this meeting. I'm hoping to just have that throughout our day-to-day. So grateful for that. So my executive director is really short. The next slide, please. And we're just gonna walk you through, again, just a provision of just really high level updates on our programming. We will have a quick fiscal update later, and then just a personnel update on our infrastructure. So as always, we are going to begin with what we call our fiscal Candyland map. It's a little bit small there, but I think we may have sent it to commissioners earlier about where our projects are in development. So for example, fatherhood is still very much early in conceptual design, as well as kind of the newcomer support after we evaluate the refugee services. Today, we are coming to the commission for a funding request for our next media campaign, as well as our kit for new parents. We are in the middle of still developing our partnership with our behavioral health developments, our PEARLS, which is our early literacy. Again, leveraging the state's massive investment in early literacy, investment in dollar partner imagination library, our First Five data landscape. And then we're in the middle of, as you all know, implementing our CHIS or Impact Legacy, everything that you are on the ground are implementing in partnership with us. And then we are actually at the tail end, on the other end of the Candyland, is evaluating Impact 2020, not Legacy, because we were implementing 2020 now. So evaluating Impact 2020. We're still doing our home visiting, last phase of home visiting and evaluations. So that is where we are on this Candyland map of all the programs that we have been implementing. Next slide, please. And these are, again, really quick, high-level updates. Please mark your calendars, because our First Five Education Summer with Stronger Starts, 25 years of First Five are it will be held in Oakland, Oakland Marriott City Center in Oakland, California, March 25th to 27th. I will let you all take a moment to hold that in your calendar. One of the highlights that we were talking about last night, I'll just give you a little glimpse, talking with the association and our county partners about the race, equity, diversity, and inclusion work. So more to come on that. Really super excited about the journey that I know now ex officio Dr. Jones helped us with, and now really kind of bring it forth more publicly in March about the work that we've done together and what that looks like on the ground and what the future looks like around that work. So that's a little bit, but we also have fabulous number of other strands that we are planning. I promise staff I will get those descriptions in as soon as possible. So, and then in addition to that, we have, I know that Executive Director Makadassian will also talk about the alignment. We've been having this year-long conversation about alignment priorities, what that means. I've been really strengthening and deepening our partnership, especially as the executive directors, has been a meaningful and intentional investment of time and resources, as well as Kitty Lopez. And so we're really grateful for that work. And we were able to work with agency on the kickoff for the early child behavioral health work that we did. So really in partnership with agency to begin to kick off with that first group cohort of grantees, a large number of whom are first fives. So kudos to you all to be able to compete and really get funded. And I know that we're in the middle of our second round with really focused on early childhood, and that extension has been extended to November 1st, correct? And so looking forward to continuing to work with the agency, and that means leveraging our $10 million with their large infrastructure transformed investment in systems. And last but not least, in terms of public policy, is that we have adopted a strong relationship with the agencies, and thank you, Sara Bates and team, and adopted our policy strategy. I know that we, the public policy advisory committee was able to do that, and just really grateful for just the agency level partnerships, and really excited about what the new year will look like in 2022. Next slide, please. So personnel updates, it's more of a contractual personnel update, is that we actually were able to go out to bid and procure an IT group to actually fulfill our IT needs. We went just for the commission's history, we went out twice for a position and weren't able to find anybody. So then we went through a different route and were able to procure IT support services. So it really just, there was kind of a little bit of tense moment. I and another person with the IT department, and I was changing printer cartridges and telling people about software updates and all of that. So really just really great to have partners on the ground and be able to procure that work. And luckily I did not have to use any of my coding skills to actually update any apps, because you don't want that, because I only code in BASIC. So, all right. Next slide. And the next commission meeting will be on December 14th, 2023. And I believe our intention is to hold it via Zoom because of different schedules. So please stay tuned for that date and that Zoom. Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your report. And I will ask our colleague and partner from the association, Ava McKenzie, to present his report. I'm sorry, actually, Ava, before you go, we have a couple of commissioner questions.
Thank you, and thank you for the update. I have a question going back to the Candyland, the status of investments flow chart. I'm wondering, for those projects that are in developed projects status, so behavioral health, pearls, etc. How long are we thinking before we start really implementing? What's the timeline?
So for us, we, again, want to be thoughtful, especially with behavioral health. And one of the things is making sure that we're leveraging the conversations and what we can do. And so I don't want to say that we're not doing any work. We are in conversation. For example, Pearl, Dolly Partner Imagination Library has, what was it? You'll remind 80 million. And we're working weekly with Dolly Partner Imagination Library about what that looks like, to be able to leverage our investment intention. If that makes sense. And I know that staff are, and I'm happy to add, if Martha's here to provide an update on the pearls. I know that we're in the middle of development of the pearls RFP.
Maybe, yes, because I know we don't have a ton of time, maybe offline if you wish. I'm very curious about the timing of that. And then I'm also wondering around personnel. I know previously, maybe it was very previously, I know we had provided a list, I think, of current vacancies. Are we still, is that still our practice? And if so, can you share that after also?
We can share vacancies, and I'll say that given our changing needs, we might be in the middle of a reorganization for consideration.
Yeah,
Given
so
our
to share that would be great, because I mean, as you describe, and I know you said it, lightheartedly, but it sounds like, capacity issues, whether it's IT or other things, right? Making sure that we're all aware of where vacancies exist, and where we need to really focus our efforts to shore up the team.
Thank you, Commissioner, for those questions. Any other, Commissioner comments or questions? Matter? Commissioners on joining us remotely? Seeing none, we'll move on, to, the association's report. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
They just told me about All right, good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you, Chair Albright. Thanks for the continued invitation of counties and the association to be part of the commission meetings. Thank you to our hosts, First by Fresno and the team. It's a lot to put this together, and partnering with the First by Commission is a big lift. So thank you for being such gracious hosts.
I wasn't gracious enough to listen to you, I'm sorry.
You all hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. I'm with First Five Association. I just had a few quick updates to build off of Jackie's comments here. The first I wanted to update everyone on is the work that the association and our counties did with recent policy around mental health support, Mental Health Services Act, or MHSA, and the modernization package that was put forth by the governor's office earlier this year, and now it's called the Behavioral Health Services Act, so BHSA. You hear that acronym? The First Five Association took a position of understanding that if there's any modernization around behavioral health services, that as leaders for 25 years in early childhood behavioral health, we should be a part of those discussions. And so we inserted ourselves into those discussions with that modernization package. And I just want to acknowledge Melissa Stafford Jones, ex-officio commissioner, who her and her department really led the way from the administration and had amazing conversations around what's possible and frankly what's not possible with this modernization. And ultimately, I think we got to a great place with a bill package that prioritizes young children as a funding and also engagement priority for future BHSA dollars. What happens next is the bill package will now go to the voters because this was a voter-free act 20 years ago now, the millionaire's tax, as it was called. So that's going to go to the voters for full approval in March. And if that approval happens, then implementation begins on the local level. So we'll keep you updated on how that's going and how prioritization of young children is happening through that funding stream. The next update I wanted to share was the association has talked about the impacts of the relatively recent flavor ban on tobacco taxes. First Five Commission and staff have also brought that to everyone's attention on what that means for revenue statewide. The association over the summer took a survey of our members and wanted to really understand what the immediate impacts look like with the rapidly declining local revenue. And we surmised, well, the results basically bear out that 4 in 10 counties are facing program cuts right now. And I'll go through some of the areas of these cuts that they're facing in this fiscal cycle. And then 6 in 10 counties are looking to cut programs and services in the next fiscal year in 24-25. And some of the reduction areas that came out of the survey included half of these reductions in community investment were around family support, such as parenting supports, home visiting programs, things like fatherhood initiatives that are happening locally. And then a lot of reductions in early childhood education space and supports, as well as systems change efforts. Certainly can get more detailed on the results and do some cross tabulation if any commissioner or staff or anyone else would like to see those results. The association is working with our counties to identify both short-term and long-term solutions for this revenue decline. and would love to keep the commission updated on those efforts. Certainly, we want to talk about the long term, the next 25 years of First Five with the commission. And so I look forward to those ongoing conversations. The next update is around a specific foundational program that First Five Commission funds, and that's the Small Population County Funding Augmentation, or SPCFA. If anything, the early childhood field loves their acronyms, so that's another one to remember. SPCFA is a foundational grant for 21 small population counties in California that provides the baseline operating dollars to run a First Five program. And it was created a couple of decades ago because of the foresight of this commission to say, you can't operate a program if you only have a handful of births every year. And so the appreciation from the small counties on that foundational support continues. We posted a work group with Jackie and her team to see how we can further make the program more efficient and work for the 21 counties as well as First Five California staff. And we look forward to bringing forward recommendations through that work group and directly to the commission in the coming weeks and months. Last but not least, Jackie mentioned we continue to meet to talk about network alignment, as we call it, and how we work together as a full network of counties, the association, and First Five California, and really understanding how we engage, how we co-advocate, how we facilitate meetings, how we co-build and show up together towards our common purpose. And really glad that we have at least 3 more meetings, I think, Jackie, coming up this year. So
At least.
At least. So, and there's likely more coming next year, and something we want to share with the entire network of what these agreements look like, and making sure that everyone's on the same page on how our network works together. It's also an example of how we can align all the investments that local counties are making, state commission is making towards our common purpose. And we're going to talk more about that later on. So those are my quick updates. Any questions or comments?
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments? I very much appreciate the information that you provided with respect to your survey of the counties, and you offered disaggregated data. I think that would be extremely helpful as we think about going forward and where the counties are having specific impact and the concerns that they have, and how we can partner together. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your work, and that is terrific. If I could turn over to Jackie, I think maybe or director.
Executive Director, Gonzalez, for our local community.
And while you're coming up, I just want to echo others in thanking you with deep gratitude for welcoming us here with such open arms and such information and care with which you do your work. Thank you so much, and to your entire team for all their work. You know, it took a lot to plan all this, so we're grateful. Thank you, sir.
One of my goals was to make sure that you get to see that this is a labor that is done in teamwork. So you saw all of my teammates before me and making sure that they were supporting throughout yesterday and today. And I can't do any of the work alone. And you saw many of the partners that make the Lighthouse for Children what it is. So we're grateful to have you here to get to see a little bit of the magic that happens here. So my presentation is coupled with Wendy. Wendy, you could sit like right here. She's part of the central region with me, and the two of us are going to give you a quick overview. First Five Executive Director for San Luis. So we'll let me welcome you. Bienvenidos to Fresno. We appreciate the opportunity to host you on behalf of the Californians that call the Central Valley their home, or the Central Region, as we also call it. As you heard, my name is Fabiola Gonzalez, Fabi for friends and colleagues, so feel free. And I serve as the Executive Director for First Five and Fresno County. And I also serve as the Vice President for our First Five Association. So very familiar with Avo on Zoom call all the time. Our central region, as we are known in First Five Association speak, is composed of 8 counties: Merced, Mariposa, Madera, Fresno, Kings, Tulare, Kern, and San Luis Obispo. And there's a slide that is coming up where you'll get, no, I think this one, yep, there it is. That's our region. I want to make sure that you keep that, as you hear Wendy and I talk about, you know, where we are in California. We are between 1.5 to 2.5 hours of national parks. We are known for our agriculture, as I'm sure you've been hearing and you've been seeing on your way here. We have major crops like grapes, almonds, peaches, and nectarines that are grown here. Fresno, Tulare, Merced, and Kern counties are always guaranteed a spot in the list of the top 10 producing counties in the nation. There's always a fight every year about which county is seen as top, the number 1. San Luis Obispo is also part of our central region and is home to a celebrated wine country, historic sites, and gorgeous scenery. Paso Robles, anybody? Less than 2 hours from here. That can boast they are the geographical center of California. There is a marker on Highway 99. There's a picture of that. You guys can go to that slide. Some of you likely passed on your way here. If you didn't see it, make sure you look for it. Highway 99 has a pine tree and a palm tree that differentiates Southern California from Northern California and a palm tree. And it's a fun fact of us Central Valley natives. Collectively, our counties are also home to over 225,000 children under 5, with about 40,000 new babies born every year. Can you hear me okay? So there's much to share about the excellent work that our respective First Fives, all of those counties that you saw on the map, do. But today we will focus on stories and examples for you on the First Five California investments in our region, and on the work that our county commissions are known for locally. So yes, we receive funds from First Light California to do amazing things locally. And we also have a Proposition 10 allocation that we all use to respond to the needs of our families. And you'll get to hear a little bit about that as well. One of our fellow Central Region Executive Directors mentioned in a recent Central Region meeting that when First Light California commits dollars on an initiative, it galvanizes the work on the ground. For small county commissions like Madera, for example, the impact investment has been instrumental in offering the training and meeting coaching needs for all of the early care and education providers, while also themselves learning how to leverage and coordinate various funding sources. Kings County now has a detailed profile of their home visiting landscape, thanks to the home visitation coordination support. They are in a position now where they know what programs are available, what their funding sources and eligibility criteria are, and this helps them better coordinate. I was just talking to Clarissa yesterday, and she tells me now I know that 6 people, I get them on a call and we figure out a way to submit applications together as one. In Tulare County, their First Five has become the local lead in professional development opportunities for all home visitors, thanks to this support from First Light California. After they heard firsthand what was the training, the knowledge, and understanding that home visitors in Tulare County needed. So topics like addiction, child welfare investigations, and support for rehabilitation and recovery were all part of this year's home visitors conference. And it was done in a way that it was conference style, because home visitors many times are not seen as people that are critical to the development of families and children, and Tulare County prioritized making sure that it was 125 people strong and that they felt honored for the work that they do every day. Mariposa County is our smallest member, and Nikki leans heavily on the support she receives from First Light California, as you heard Avo mention. She's one of the small county augmentation receivers. And she also leans on Scott's team in Merced County to leverage services for families. Nikki is a team of one, and her top priority is ensuring that 700+ young children in Mariposa County have access to quality early learning opportunities. As a first five commission though, she also must find ways to meet other requirements, right, that have, like the rest of us do, and us with a team slightly bigger than hers. In Fresno, you've seen the Lighthouse, but I want to make sure that you know that we have been given the opportunity to see firsthand how systems can change through our role in Impact Hub. So I remember talking to Lily, who leads our work here in Fresno, and she mentioned to me that the region came together not long ago and said, hey, there is a lack of ages and stages questionnaire knowledge. We don't have enough childcare providers that are trained, but we don't have the wherewithal to just train everybody. So we need to train the trainers. So can we have a training where we train trainers and then they go out into all of the counties in our region to do this? And the region came together, assessed that was a need, and they made it happen. And to me, that's like from this point forward, right? There is now a challenge in a system of care that this funding and this opportunity of a hub came together to address. Similarly, with refugee family serving support that you provided us, you know, we have a virtual learning collaborative with agencies that serve refugee families that didn't know that they could access things like childcare payment assistance for newly arriving families. And that has allowed us to make sure that they have access to those supports and also keep them connected to the work that First Fives have known, because we partner with some of the other agencies and now they're part of our family and we maintain them informed of all the other ways that they can serve those refugee families thanks to that support. Through our local relationship with family serving organizations, we have leveraged your investments to maximize positive outcomes. And at the same time, we are charged, as I said earlier, with being stewards of our own Proposition 10 allocation to fill the gaps in the system of care that touches families with young children. And I'm gonna let Wendy now share a bit more about this piece, and then I'll come back.
Well, it's my honor to be here today representing both First Five San Luis Obispo County and also the Central Region. I'm the regional rep on the First Five Association Board of Directors, Wendy Wendt, Executive Director of Slow County. And I have to say, we have 100% attendance by our Central Region team. If you all could stand up, I just want to briefly yeah, the original names. One is Lira, Scott and Merced. Probably you know already from Fresno. Amy Travis was here this morning from Fern, had to go take care of a sick kiddo. And we also have a representative from our COSA here, but Supervisor Rosemary Smallco. Rosemary Smallco from our COSA. Have I forgotten anyone? Oh, and Nikki.
It's Larry, Michelle.
Oh, Michelle, sorry. Michelle is here in spirit and Nikki is not here, but of course we have Rosemary here as a representative from Mariposa County. So. It is an honor to be here today with all of you on the First Five California Commission meeting and with my Central Region First Five family. I know I speak for all of us here today when I say that it is an honor of a lifetime to work alongside local families and organizations, keeping the love and commitment alive for our community's youngest members as they get a healthy start in life. The First Five regions all have a tradition, as you probably know, of meeting regularly to engage in shared problem solving, collective initiative building, and storytelling. Our first regional in-person gathering post-COVID last December in Paso Robles engaged us in a day-long race, equity, diversity, and inclusion workshop, which was deeply inspiring and challenging as we together delved into both topics, personal and professional. Truth be told, it's the storytelling every month at our regional meetings that I find particularly inspiring. It's when I get to learn all these unique ways, both unique to individual counties as well as common among all of us, that our respective communities know us for in our work. How we, over these past 25 years, have grown an amazing array of local examples of community commitments to kids. We grow programs, we amplify parent voices, we sponsor family festivals, we host professional gatherings, we distribute books and disaster aid. Here are just a few examples of what First Five is known for on the ground across the region. First Five Mariposa operates a popular preschool with First Five funds. First Five Kern recently hosted an annual ACES conference and has been doing so locally for the past 3 years, forging partnerships with various community organizations, schools, healthcare providers, and social services agencies. This conference raises awareness about childhood trauma and promotes collaboration. In other news in Kern County, the buzz is on with a recent announcement that 25 mini grants will be awarded in celebration of 25 years in the community. First Five Kings has stood up 4 family resource centers across the county in partnership with schools and local community-based organizations, providing a range of services for young families in warm, welcoming environments. First Five Madeira Family Resource Center is the preferred place for all, and she means all questions. There is no wrong door policy, embracing the idea of families walking away with connections, resources, and answers. As a bonus, families get to sign up for play and learn groups. As for partners, First Five Madeira is known as a trusted partner for everything and anything 0 to 5. I think we can all relate to that. We are the partner on anything and everything 0 to 5. First Five Merced hosts an annual children's summit at which local champions for children are honored every year. 2023 was the 19th year of this event, with over 400 attendees in person and online. Dr. Manuel Pastor, who I think many of you have heard speak, was the keynote. Also in Merced, First Five Imagination Library is sending over 5,000 books out into the community per month. First Five Merced is also known for massive leveraging of additional dollars to upgrade local parks and playgrounds. I believe 18 in the last, not so distant past.
We're working on it right now.
First Five Tulare County is a well-known convener in the county. They bring their partners together to offer professional development trainings and most recently worked to provide much needed resources during the flooding experienced in several of their communities. In San Luis Obispo County, First Five, over its 25-year history, has become known as a bold and collaborative innovator, a seed funder and joint planner on many of our county's biggest projects focused on the lives of young children and their families. Examples include Martha's Place Children's Assessment and Treatment Center, Family Friendly Workplaces Program with our local Chamber of Commerce, the We Are the Care Coalition to address local child care crisis and challenges, Slow County on DocuSupport, and one of my personal favorites, creation of a North County Paso Robles Uptown Family Park on First Five purchased land adjacent to a school and a library and a preschool campus. Speaking of buildings, this Lighthouse for children is another shining example of local First Five innovation and collective impact here in Fresno. Families access speech therapy, play and learn groups, immunizations, and high-quality childcare all in one roof. And all of us in this room and working in First Five are known for our scrappy work to leverage community resources for early childhood. We show up to get our partners, our legislators, our business leaders, and other funders to recognize the importance, the value of investing in this life stage. Largely because of First Five, in each of our counties, within the central region and across California, the uniquely important needs of young children are more on the map than ever before. And yet, we find ourselves in this place of declining revenue at the very moment when our work is recognized for value in our communities. I will pass it back to Fabi to carry on that theme.
Now more than ever, we are embracing our role as a convener, as an innovator, to use our limited dollars to leverage our impact. The Central Valley counties are looking to regionalize as much as we can to leverage our allocation. How can we partner with our Children's Hospital, for example, for early screening and referrals for all of our families? Help Me Grow Fresno, Help Me Grow Central Valley. Imagine that. We are working to make that a reality now. We are APs, all of us here, like Wendy mentioned, we are APs, not the whole of the solution. And in the early childhood system of care, we have made a difference in how our counties prioritize the first 5 years of life. And by we, I mean all of us, First Five California, First Five Commission, and the First Five Associations together. So when people see or hear your ads, or they see them on the freeways, hear them on the radio, they think of us, and vice versa. When we show up the way that we do on the ground, they think of you. Californians agreed to reduce smoking even more with the most recent passages of propositions like we heard, including the flavor ban this past November. 25 years. In the last 25 years, we've created this infrastructure across our state to prioritize early childhood through the tobacco tax. And now the revenue series is declining, leaving our infrastructure on shaky grounds. $500 million in the next 7 years lost in early childhood supports across the state of California is an emergency that must force us to lock arms together. Because if we don't, then we lose the ground that we've gained over the last 25 years. And I want to make sure that we emphasize that with all of you today. Because ultimately, it's our children, the future of our state that loses. If there was any other time to innovate and think big together, we think it's now. Let us figure out how California can continue to meet the needs of its youngest residents by showing up for their first 5 years of life in new ways together. It's our time to figure out the next chapter of First Five California, First Five Commission, the First Five story that many states across the nation look to us to model and to implement in their state. It's our time to come together to figure out how we're going to do that in a new way in the next 25 years. I appreciate you all for being here. I welcome you, and I hope that it's not the last time you come to visit, and you'll get to meet with the rest of our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any commission discussion or questions? What a fantastic presentation. Thank you all to the entire Central Valley for your partnership, your incredible innovation, your ability to leverage funding to think about young people and families and strength in a profound way that is best practices and inspiration for the entire state. Thank you very much. I will open it up to public comment. Members of the public may speak for up to 3 minutes on non-agendized items or items not related to pending judicial, administrative litigation or personnel matters. No action by the state commission may be taken on this public comment. If you wish to comment, please come to the podium, or if you're on attending remotely, use the hand function and Jamie will call on you in order in which you are signed up, starting with those in the room and then going to our virtual queue. Anyone in the room?
Guys, the Central Region are taller than me. Francine Rod, Executive Director for First Five Monterey County, and now you see why I call her Fabulous Fabiola and all of the Central Valley folks. So I'm part of the Bay Area region, and we are excited that you'll be joining us, I think, next year at this time in Monterey. So we look forward to seeing you there. I think my colleagues said it really well. I just did want to add a few things to help to support and illuminate some additional areas of need. So when I first started with First Five, I had this, and who's timing me? Jamie, are you timing me? I need to time myself.
It's the green lights.
Oh, there it is.
It'll turn yellow.
Okay, so we were thinking, wow, we'll be done. By the time the tobacco taxes decline, we will have figured all of this out. All the systems will be in place to really make a difference. Then we figured out that systems change, takes a heck of a lot more time than we had anticipated, with policies, practices, resource flows, relationships, power dynamics, let alone mental models. Then it went to really understanding that we've been swimming in the dominant culture that has kept these problems in place, and that we really need to look at race, equity, diversity, and inclusion and root causes to get to the different place where we are really making change. Deep breath there, and recognizing that there were major changes that we needed to make in order to get at those root causes and the historical persistent trauma that our BIPOC communities have been experiencing, and really shifting the power and the dynamics in our communities. We really started to look at the evidence-based practices and look at how they were normed, looked at where they were, looked at whether or not they really were supporting our communities and what did we need to do differently, looking at those practices and how we were implementing them. Right when we figured out in terms of our early childhood development champion, being a champion and an advocate, supporting whole child, whole family, whole systems connections, healing focused, relationship based, quality driven capacity building, our funding began to decline. We've already hit our cliff. We have a 40% less funding that we've been able to put out the door just this fiscal year. We've also increased our funding in addition to, like they were mentioning, leveraging other sources, getting funding from outside. We have a lot of support from other philanthropists in our community. Almost 40% of our funding comes outside of Prop 10. It's still not enough. What we've noticed is that it's not only the what of the programs, but the how they're being implemented that's really important. And that we serve as that connective tissue and that coordination, which is missing from a lot of the grants that you're able to get. It's for programs and they're siloed. And what our communities and our counties and our parents are saying is, we need that whole family, whole child connective tissue. And that's really what's also missing. So we need to support the programs and we have to support the connective tissue that First Five is so good at doing. So we really look to you all as well to help us, as they were saying, to figure out an approach that really is collaborative together. I've looked at some of your fund balances and I'm hoping that we can come up with a way that there's some funding from First Five California that can stop the bleeding while we look at a longer term solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any member of the public in the room? Any member on the phone? Okay, thank you so much. We'll close public comment. We'll move on to our consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are to be considered routine and will be enacted by one motion followed by a vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the commission, audience, or staff member requests that a specific item be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action. Any agenda item that is removed will be voted on with a separate motion following the consent calendar. Does any commissioner or member of the team or the public wish to remove an item from our consent calendar? Seeing none and seeing none from our remote colleagues on the phone, I will call for a motion. The motion is, I think one of my fellow commissioners could state it. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion, we have a second. We'll announce the motion to approve the consent calendar. And if, Jamie, I think it was Commissioner Hazen that moved. Rizzo, Majors, oh, was it Majors? I'm sorry. Yeah. Commissioner Majors has seconded.
Katie Albright,
Approved.
Gina Hazen,
Oh, sorry, hang on one second, we have some discussion.
My apologies. So there was something I noticed, and it's a small dollar amount, but it sort of begged the question for me. So this was in the ratifications, and this was, I think we spent $150,000 on sponsorships. And as I looked, it said per, I think it was in 2007, we had decided to do that. And the dollars we had in 2007 are very different than the dollars we have in 2023. And so I bring it up not because $150,000 in the grand scheme of things is so much money, but as revenues are declining, my hope is that for small things like this, just like for big things, we're digging in and thinking about all of these things. And is $150,000 on annual sponsorships right or wrong in this environment?
So I know that Sarah Batches and team are reevaluating how we are managing our sponsorship because we've been doing it for such a long time and really developing an intentional rubric and right sizing it given the context of everything that everybody's talking about.
And just which accounts does that come from?
Education.
Thank you.
Did you want to remove anything? Or just have a discussion about it? Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. If I could have, Jamie call the roll.
Katie Albright,
Approve?
Shannon Haven,
Aye.
Elsa Jimenez,
Aye.
Jackie Majors,
Aye.
Vivian Velasco Paz. Lori Risco.
Aye. Thank you, the vote passed.
Jamie, did you call pause?
I did.
Approve. I couldn't get off mute. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda is, moving into our regular agenda. First 5 staff will present information items. No action will be taken on these items. And our first item is a financial update. I'll turn it over to the team. Marcia, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Press the mic. While you're doing the mic, Marcia Thomas, thank you so much. Your first 5 California Fiscal Services Officer Administration, and you'll be presenting the financial update. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here today. So this is gonna be a financial update. First slide that we have is, I didn't realize how small it was. I apologize. So this is our funding structure. I'll kind of talk you through it since it's so tiny. The first box is just showing that the tobacco tax is collected by CDTFA. It moves into CDTFA's accounts. From there, it will transfer to the California Children and Families Trust Fund, where they'll take out their adjustments for statewide assessments, for their administrative costs, for, what else? In the back. So once they do the adjustment, then they transfer it into all the different accounts as far as like the county side and the state administrative side. So that happens in the yellow where it's 20%, the state commission, 80% for the, counties. And then it shows what we utilize the funding for on our side. And then blue boxes are, the audit, they're all pretty much state audits. So just kind of giving an idea of the structure and the funding of the money, how it comes in. And so, as I mentioned, our primary revenue sources are from Proposition 10. We also get revenues for the Proposition 56 tobacco bill. And then what's new to us is the CSET, so the California Electronic Cigarette Excise Tax. That began July 1st of 2022. There's 4 quarters of it, and overall, the first year we got approximately 5.5 million total. So 20% went to the state commission, which is a little over $1 million. And so as the previous slide displayed, revenues are collected by the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. They're the ones that transfer it to the different accounts after all the assessments are taken. But we also get investment income. So all money that are deposited into the state treasury are determined to be in excess of current or immediate needs. They'll go ahead and invest it to get funding. So earned interest on all the accounts come in quarterly. And then the next one, sorry, it's kind of light. It didn't seem so light when I was doing the slide. So just a little bit about the funds. They're continuous appropriation, so money allocated and appropriated to the state administered accounts that is not encumbered or expended remain in the same account for the next fiscal year, so it just goes forward. Like I mentioned previously, they're interest-bearing accounts. So all of the accounts are earning interest at the current appropriation or apportionment yield rates. We also have the unallocated account. The funds in the unallocated account can be used for expenditures by the state commission for any purpose of the act. And then we also have our 15% reserve on all of our funds.
So this slide right here is, the state commission's side of the 20%. So overall, it's showing the statutory distribution, 6% for media, 5% for education, 3% childcare research, 2% allocated, and then the 1% for admin. And then the conversion is just what part of that is our budget. So 30% of our budget is for media, 20% or 25% is for education and so forth. And so it's showing what we're projecting for this current fiscal year, what we plan to get in, what we're projecting to get in.
Running.
Okay, so then there's different changes to our revenue factors that we face. So it could be changes to laws and regulations, and we all know the flavor ban is one of the biggest impacts we're facing right now. Trends in taxable sales of cigarettes and other tobacco products and changes in consumption. I know we have experienced in the past, there are certain months in the year where we don't get a lot of revenue. That's usually in November and February. And so that's kind of what is capturing this word from the difference. So because of the decline in revenue and the flavor ban, we have budget contingency clauses in all of our agreements. So it's only valid and enforceable if there's sufficient funding. And if the revenues go down, then we have the right to work with the contractor to reduce the overall equipment amount. And this is what we are projecting overall for this fiscal year. So for 23-24, it's showing what we plan on bringing in for the state commission side. What we project to expend and the 15% reserve and then the overall fund balance for this year. So we would end it at 105 million. This is just a projection. Is there any questions?
Thank you so much for the presentation. Any questions from commissioners?
I'm curious, how does this projected fund balance compare to the previous year?
That's a good question. I don't have it off the top of my head. Really good question. But I don't have that. I don't want to know.
So on the item, it is table 2. And our revenue amount changes, no, the fund balance is not.
The fund balance.
Table 2.
So yeah, the total, oh no, it's not. Do you have the other?
And I guess then it says significantly different or not.
It has declined. I would say it probably declined, and I'm just roughing it out. It's approximately
50 million.
maybe it was like a 10% drop. Maybe, yeah.
Thank you. So we'll get specifics back to.
Yeah, get that back to you. Sorry about that.
From last year, but, and I know we've spoken about this in the past, there was an intentional, expenditure of our fund balance when we went through our budget discussions in May of last year. And so that's when we began to have a robust conversation about impact legacy and financial investment. So you'll see the intentional, decline in our fund balance. With support from our county commitment, our county commissioners wanting us to invest in impact legacy.
Just make a comment. when we in public health do our job correctly, less people are gonna smoke. And so it's unsustainable in terms of relying on a funding source that is taxing bad behavior, because eventually people will hopefully, not smoke. And now with the flavor ban, you know, less sales because a lot of our residents were using that because of the flavors. And so many of our, it sounds like from the association and just a couple of years that I've been sitting here and my own experience in Monterey County, that many of our local first five organizations are facing the cliff already or have already faced it and are having to tremendously cut back services. Now, a time when we need it more, we saw with the sheltering in place because of COVID and trying to prevent an infectious disease to spread amongst our residents, that many of our families didn't access services and now have much, much greater needs than they did before that. So at some point, I challenge us as a commission and the association and our members to be thinking about what alternative funding sources could be part of this mix, because if not, we're just going to continue to see a decline and you know, services, families will go with unmet needs and unmet services that then will end up costing society and much, much more in the long run. So I don't know when we can begin to have those conversations, but it just keeps less and less, right? We keep dipping into our fund balance to just maintain status quo or even reduce level of service. And I know from what Francine said, you know, 40% reduction is our experience in Monterey County. I'm pretty sure the other counties have similar experiences. So I look forward to just future discussions about how we diversify our funding streams for this space.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions? Yes. Thank you.
As we think about this new funding scenario we find ourselves in, one of the things that I wonder and have continued to wonder about is, you know, the statutory distribution of funds, right? Which accounts dollars have to go to. And I know it's a really heavy lift, but is that also something that we can look into, right? How can we change those distributions? Does it make sense based on the impact we've had, for example, for the largest share of our dollars to be going to mass media, 30%? Are those dollars better spent more directly touching children and families? And so if the answer is yes, how can you do that hard work to change what the statute requires?
Thank you very much. Any other feedback or comments? Yes, Chairman Major.
Thank you, and I appreciate the discussion from both commissioners. I've been part of this for a long time where we've been having these conversations, and I challenge us to think about how we, you know, because it's easy to look at one thing and say, should we be spending our money this way? Because this is how we spent it last year or 5 years ago, and our revenue is declining. But it's the strategy on how we spend less, right? And it's what gets us the biggest bang for our buck. Like when we look back at the commission and say, what are we here for? What is this? Not the people, but you know, what is this body for? What is what are these dollars for? You know, is it to be a catalyst for new program development? Is it to be, you know, focusing on the advocacy side? And I think as we have worked together over the years to think about strategy, I think we cannot just, you know, think about the reduction of funds. So now we get a reduction across the board. I think we have to think about where strategically now we need to spend the money to meet our mission.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you. Somebody else? Yeah, thank you, Chair Albright. In that spirit, I think the other maybe recognition is that other aspects of our surrounding programs and context have evolved as well. And one of those is the Medi-Cal program. And I think something in the state of California is really leading the way in the nation, not just for early childhood, but across the board, is really thinking about how to really think about the linkages between community and community-based services and the healthcare system, particularly in the Medi-Cal delivery system, so both providers and health plans.
And so I think one area worth exploring as part of the conversation that we're having right now is to really step back and think strategically about the role of the Medi-Cal program and the partnerships around thinking about sort of this intersection of community-based services and the health and well-being of children and families.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Any other comments, Director Wong wanted just to give you any opportunity to comment or based on the feedback that you've heard so far?
I have 2 mics. I'm double mic, wait, would I go here? For the last couple of years, and you all know I've only been at First South California for 2.5 years, so really a long timer here, right? Really coming in, one of the biggest things to do is actually looking under a hood and being super intentional about our finances and being public and looking at it. Right, staff would say that, again, bringing it to commission meetings, being intentional, involving staff, having conversations about sponsorship, intentionality with our new North Star and audacious goal, and how do we do that, right, for purpose. And I think that is really a new experience for many of us, but I think that we need to put it on the table, and so that we can have these conversations about leveraging the environment that we were in. This administration has invested the largest amount of money in early childcare or childhood systems. And any administration I've seen in the last several decades. Right, I'm looking at you, but I would say so, you've been around for a long time. So the system, how are we plugging into the system, as you said, the infrastructure, and we are working with partners on what that means, and loud and clear last year from the commission is like leverage. So if we're not putting out money right away with Pearl, it's like, well, we have $80 million over here from Delaware Department of Imagination Library. What is our space, right? If we are not putting the, what is our investment in behavioral health? When we are partnering with a $4.7 billion investment on the state side, what is our niche, if you will, right? So being super intentional about what superpower, to Commissioner Major's comment, is, are we leveraging? Because having less money doesn't mean that we do less. It may mean what we're all doing in Fresno, but being intentional. What does collective impact look like at the state level? So it's easier for you all on the ground level to access those dollars too, right? So what you all as executive directors in 58 counties is what we are doing at the state level, and I hope to do more on that state level. Sorry, yeah.
No, thank you. I think it's, while deeply concerning that we have falling revenue, what I'm also hearing is we have a lot of collective will in terms of working together in recognition with both the counties, as well as the alliance, as well as all of us as commissioners, to think about how we can be strategic in the work forward. I think we all said some version of, we need to be strategic, we need to be forward thinking, we need to maximize resources that we currently have, as well as think about how collectively we can support the children and families in our great state of California, and how we can do it together. And so I look forward to working together on how we can structure our future calendars and potentially put other meetings on the books, so that we can really take a deep dive in some of the finances. I know that's an important priority for you and the team. So thank you very much. Any public comment on this matter? Thank you so much, appreciate it. And also appreciate that we continue to get into difficult issues, and we are on time on the agenda, so. Our next item on the agenda is the Bagley-Keene open meeting requirements. And I'd like to invite and welcome Milad Dolju, who's our Deputy Attorney General at the California Department of Justice, to present an overview of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. As we all continue to understand what the impact of COVID and remote meetings are, we have new provisions, and it's helpful for us to understand those going forward. So, Deputy Attorney General Dolju, welcome.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Great, great. And then I'm also trying to share a screen. Is it showing up? It should just say Bagley Keene Open Meeting Act on the first page.
yes, it does. And then we saw pictures of children and giants.
Go A's.
I don't know. Yes, we see your screen. We
Okay.
do see.
Super. So good afternoon. My name is Malad Dalji. I'm with the California Department of Justice. I'm here today to present a very broad overview of the requirements of the Bagley Keene Open Meeting Act. Complying with the requirements of Bagley Keene creates inefficiencies and frustration because it deprives people of their natural communication patterns. As a member of a public body, learning to comply with Bagley Keene is not intuitive. But if you understand the purpose of Bagley Keene, it may make it easier to comply with its requirements. The purpose of Bagley Keene is not to promote government efficiency. If efficiency was the priority, the voters would have created a department with a single decision maker. Instead, voters created a multi-member body. In doing so, they determined that consensus building was more important than efficiency. The consensus building process takes time and is very different from the individual decision maker model. The voters also decided that the public should have a seat at the table. Bagley Keene's open meeting notice, public participation, and records requirements promote the public's ability to be part of this process. If you keep in mind that consensus building and public participation are higher priorities than efficiency, Bagley Keene requirements are much easier to understand and follow. There are 5 types of multi-member bodies that are required to comply with Bagley Keene. The most common are multi-member state bodies created by statute or by executive order. Because First 5 California is a multi-member state body created by statute, it is required to comply with Bagley Keene. Another type of body that is required to comply with Bagley Keene is an advisory body of a state body. An advisory body is a subcommittee of a state body that consists of at least 3 members, has not been delegated any decision-making authority, and is created by formal action of the state body or a member of the state body. Members of an advisory body can be members of the state body, staff, or even private citizens. Formal action includes any type of action of a state body resulting in an advisory body. For example, a state body directing its staff qualifies as a formal action. Formal action can also include implied ratification. For example, if 3 members of a commission regularly meet outside of a public meeting to discuss agency business, it is possible that the 3 members have created an advisory body. Therefore, we generally caution that no more than 2 members of a state body should discuss agency business outside of a public meeting. We refer to this as the rule of 2. Complying with the rule of 2 can help commissioners avoid inadvertent violations of Bagley Keene. Bagley Keene also applies to multi-member bodies that have been delegated any decision-making authority of a state body, such as an executive committee of a state body. Finally, Bagley Keene applies to a private or public body if a member of a state body serves on the public body in their official capacity and the body receives funding from that member state body. It is also important to remember that individuals appointed to a state body are members as soon as they are appointed, even before they are sworn in. Bagley Keene requires all meetings of a state body to be open to the public. A meeting is a gathering of a majority of the state body to deliberate on any matters under the jurisdiction of that state body. Deliberation includes not only decision-making, but also information gathering. Bagley Keene specifically prohibits serial meetings. A serial meeting is a series of communications, each involving less than a majority of members, but collectively involving a majority of members of a state body to deliberate on any matter under the state body's jurisdiction. A serial meeting can occur through a chain of communications from one member to another, or when one person acts as a hub of a wheel and communicates individually with the various spokes. A serial meeting can also occur directly or indirectly through intermediaries. A serial meeting can involve face-to-face communications, telephone calls, emails, and texting. Again, the philosophy behind Bagley Keene is to promote public participation in the deliberation process. Serial meetings are prohibited because when members of a state body engage in serial communication outside of public meetings, the public is deprived of the opportunity to participate in the deliberation. There are some narrow exceptions to the open meeting requirement. For example, staff may brief or respond to questions from one member of the commission at a time about an item that's been agendized for a public meeting. But staff may not communicate the comments or views of one member to another member, which would constitute a prohibited serial meeting. There are specific types of gatherings that are not considered meetings. For example, a conversation between a member of a state body and a non-member, such as a member of the public or staff, so long as it is not part of a serial meeting, does not qualify as a meeting. There are also limited exceptions for conferences, noticed non-governmental meetings, meetings of other governmental bodies, and social gatherings, so long as a majority of members do not discuss agency business. One-way confidential legal advice from staff counsel to board members is also not a meeting, so long as board members do not discuss the legal advice amongst themselves outside of a public meeting. Bagley-Keene requires meetings to be noticed at least 10 calendar days in advance, including posting notice on the internet. The notice must also be provided in writing to anyone who requests a copy of the notice. Anyone may receive notices for all meetings, may request to receive all notices for meetings of a state board. Notice must include an agenda of all matters to be discussed at the meeting, including a brief description of each matter. The brief description should contain enough information about the matter so that an average person can make an informed decision whether to attend and participate in the meeting. If an agenda item concerns a contract, loan, grant, we recommend that the description reflect the purpose, parties, and dollar amount of the contract, loan, or grant. Generally, items may not be added to the agenda after the 10-day notice period has passed. And a board member may not discuss any item that is not on the agenda at the public meeting, even if no action is to be taken by the board. Generally, members of a state body may participate in a meeting only if they are physically present at the meeting. However, as of January 1st, 2024, state bodies will have the option of using one of two teleconference provisions. Under the traditional teleconference requirements, all remote locations that members participate from must be disclosed in the notice agenda, must be available for members of the public to participate from, and must be ADA compliant. All votes must be taken by roll call, and at least one member must participate from the primary in-person location of the meeting. Since the beginning of the pandemic, there have been exceptions to the traditional teleconference requirements, either by executive order or legislation. The most current exception, which expires at the end of this calendar year, allows completely virtual meetings with no in-person requirement for members of the board, staff, or the public. On January 1st, 2024, a new teleconference provision will be added as an alternative to the traditional teleconference requirements. Under the new teleconference provision, members of a state board may participate from remote, non-public, and undisclosed locations, so long as at least a quorum of members participate from a single physical location that is available for public participation and ADA compliant. In addition to access to the primary physical location, members of the public must be provided the opportunity to participate remotely by telephone and by internet or an online platform. Additionally, members of the state body must be visible on video at all times, and members participating remotely must disclose the presence of any other adults in the room. This particular teleconference provision will sunset on January 1st, 2026. Members of the public must have the opportunity to attend every meeting. You may not require members of the public to provide identification. In particular circumstances, security officers may require identification, but that information may not be shared with meeting personnel. Sign-up sheets must clearly state they are voluntary, and identification may not be required to provide public comment. Members of the public may record, film, or stream meetings unless it is disruptive to the meeting. Opportunity for public comment must be provided before or during every meeting. The most common practice is to provide opportunity for public comment for each agenda item after staff presentation, but before deliberation by the members. Time limits may be imposed on public comment so long as they are reasonable under the circumstances. The public has the right to monitor the votes of each member, and Bagley-Keene requires that all votes and abstentions be public and recorded. Best practice is to use roll call for all decisions and to record votes in the meeting minutes. There are discrete and narrow exceptions to the requirement that all meetings of a state body must be open to the public. State bodies may meet in closed session, meaning without members of the public, only under specific circumstances that are expressly identified in Bagley-Keene. There are closed exceptions that apply to all state bodies and some that by statute may only be used by particular state body. One of these exceptions that may be used by any state body is the pending litigation exception. Under the pending litigation exception, a board may meet in closed session to confer with or receive advice from its legal counsel regarding pending litigation when discussion in open session would prejudice the position of the body in the litigation. To obtain legal advice from its counsel on a litigation matter, the board must follow specific procedural requirements. Not all legal advice may be heard in closed session, only legal advice related to pending or imminent litigation. The closed session must be properly noticed. For litigation that has already been initiated, the agenda must include the title of the case. Legal counsel is required to submit a memo to the board stating the specific reasons and legal authority for the closed session no later than 1 week after the closed session, but the memo is confidential and exempt from disclosure. Information received and discussed in closed session are confidential and may not be disclosed to outside parties by members or staff who attend the closed session. It's important to remember that the confidentiality of a closed session is the commission's privilege, not that of individual members. There are special procedural requirements that apply to all closed sessions. The notice agenda must indicate that there will be a closed session, identify the items to be discussed, and state the statutory authority for the closed session. Before convening in closed session, the body must also announce an open session the issues that it will discuss in closed session and allow for public comment. The body may address in closed session only those matters listed on the agenda and announced at the meeting. Board members may not stray into other topics, even if those topics are reasonably related to the closed session agenda item. A staff member must attend each closed session to record topics discussed and decisions made in the closed session. After the closed session, the board must reconvene in public before adjourning the meeting. Only those staff members with an essential role may attend a closed session. Failure to comply with Bagley-Keene can result in penalties and injunctive relief, including reversal of an action or a decision by the state body. That concludes the presentation. If any of the members have specific questions about anything we covered, I'd be happy to try to answer them. And we
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I also want to add that our website has some really good information. We have a Bagley-Keene guide on our website that was very recently updated, and it most likely will be updated again as soon as the new teleconference provisions become operative on January 1st.
Thank you so much. Before I open up to everyone, could you just put slide 14 back up? So much of Bagley-Keene, while confusing and potentially, well, in the spirit of open government and one of the new provisions that I wanted to make sure, maybe the next slide.
Sure, is this SB 544?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make sure everyone had these new provisions in mind, because this is a change. And in the next item, we're going to talk about our meeting cadence And part of our meeting cadence over the last year, 2 years has been set because we were able to meet remotely, and this provision impacts that ability. So I just wanted to draw that to people's attention and see if anyone had any questions on this to our Deputy Attorney General, but in particular this provision. Any questions, any comments from members on the commission? And I don't see any from those online. Any members in the public have any comment?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Attorney Bill. And loud and clear that that team is not meant for efficient government. Got a lot of smiles about that, nor is the Brown Act.
Nor is the Brown.
Nor is the. So appreciate your time and outlining kind of the overview of Bagley Keene. And I think we can move on to item 6 that staff will present.
Terrific, thank you so much. And I would like to welcome Jamie Hastings, thank you so much. First 5 Administrative Services Division Deputy Director, and Simon Marquez, who is the governance department liaison, to really help to provide some historical context of our discussion around commission meetings and advisory committee structures. This is an information item, and we're gonna bring it back for decision-making at our next meeting in December. But thanks so much for the work on thinking about what our meeting structure looks like.
Thank you. So greetings, everyone. Before handing it over to Chair Albright for discussion on this topic, Simon Marquez and I will give some historical background. This first slide just gives you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so just a little historical context for how the commission and the advisory committees were efficiently conducted for many years pre-COVID, and how they are currently operating after the commission voted to change the structure of both at the beginning of this calendar year. As a reminder of how we got here, there was a desire from commissioners to meet more frequently as a commission, and for all advisory committees to be subject to the provisions of the Bagley Keene Act in order to allow for public participation. For context, at the time of this request of the commission, one advisory committee, which was a public education advisory committee, was already subject to the provisions of Bagley Keene because in 2019, there were 5 commissioners who requested to join that committee. The new structure quickly drew criticism from commissioners on the committee because of the limited information that was allowed to be shared publicly about multi-million-dollar RFPs and proprietary concepts, which were the bulk of the committee's charge. So jumping back to 2022, as we went through the process of reimagining how we could meet as a commission, it became clear that certain committees did not allow for the Bagley Keene structure, and in the end, only 2 out of 5 of the committees were made public, and after most of them reverted back to the 2-person structure, which was the case for the PEO, Public Education Committee. The intent was to have the 2 public committees, the Program and Evaluation Committee and the Public Policy Committee, meet on the same day as the full commission in the morning, immediately prior, in order to consolidate for scheduling purposes. And while the intentions were good, again, it quickly became clear that this in practice would not work because staff need commissioner input well ahead of time. And so hearing from the committee the morning of, just prior to the full commission meeting, didn't allow for substitute. So as you will hear today, there was a lot of great ideas in theory, but over the last year, we've learned that many did not align with commissioner schedules, workflow, and the time needed to prepare for information and action items. So this next slide includes several bullets on experiences from commissioners and staff participating in commission meetings. There were some workload changes with the current structure, which included more time spent on preparing for commission meetings and less time managing programs and projects from First Bite California staff. Given declining revenue, hiring additional staff to hold more meetings and managing investments is not feasible for First Bite California. Additionally, there will be an increase in costs, as the chair pointed out just previously, due to the new requirements, for Bagley Keene starting January 1st, 2024. So, staff has recommendations on how we might, restructure our meetings, going back to quarterly meetings, on the fourth Thursday of the following months, which are listed on the screen. And the months align, with the state budget cycle and when we submit fund reconciliation data to the Department of Finance. In a little bit more rationale, why we picked some of these months is in January, we will have the governor's January 10 budget. The commission can review the annual report, which is, required to be sent to the legislature and other folks by January 31st of each year. We would be able to post the next year's fiscal revenue projections. For May, we would have May revised budget info, and for August, we would have final budget info. In October, we will have our fund accounts reconciled on audited actuals for prior fiscal year. So that's, again, kind of the layout we would see quarterly for the year. And then staff are suggesting that in order to keep staff and others updated on project development and program implementation, we would draft a quarterly state commission update on the off months. So that folks can stay apprised of where we're at in commission meetings. Gaps between May and August and October and January also would help us avoid busier holiday and months. Turn it over to Simon to talk more about advisory committees.
Thank you, Jamie. Greetings, commissioners. Before diving into the advisory committee recommendations, we wanted to share this slide that has language from the act and how it outlines the purpose of advisory committee. So it's just a refresher. As it says in the act, the state commission and each county commission shall establish one or more advisory committees to provide technical assistance for technical and professional expertise and support for any purposes that will be beneficial in accomplishing the purposes of this act. Each advisory committee shall meet and shall make recommendations and reports as deemed necessary or appropriate. Also in the bylaws for committees, standing committees shall be appointed by a majority vote of the commission as the commission deems necessary. One member of each committee will be designated chairperson. Members of standing committees may not be compensated for their services, except that they may be paid reasonable per diem or reasonable expenses for attending standing committee meetings. So this slide quickly goes into a staff recommendation. So in short, this recommendation would revert back to pre-COVID advisory committee structure with a few caveats. There would be more consistent meeting sequencing and dosage throughout the year, ample time to work with committee members to adequately prepare for commission meetings and action items, and maintain the current number of existing advisory committees. We felt that reducing from 7 to 5 is a effective strategy that we're currently operating under. Our desire is to develop a more consistent and robust way of informing the commission and the public about what happens in advisory committee meetings. We hope to bring this back to the executive advisory committee as part of our next steps. We wanted to quickly show a timeline here, essentially of how, sequencing over a calendar year and the various months throughout the year. Yes.
I apologize, Jackie Majors, their hand up and flagging for stuff a second.
Yeah, we just can't see a slide that you're referring to.
Sorry about that. Commissioner, let me share my screen. I apologize.
Thank you.
Is that right?
And she's okay, thank you.
Excellent. Sorry about that. Okay, so this slide provides a proposed meeting timeline based on the Commission Advisory Committee meeting structure recommendations. Again, I apologize. It's a little small, but commissioners, you do have the PowerPoint slide deck in that we sent previously. Just to clarify a few points. So you'll see the 4 commission meeting dates in those red circles up there. The yellow triangles are kind of times throughout the year that we would facilitate advisory committee meetings. And then the little blue squares is actually when we were proposing to send out the off-month quarterly updates. At the end of January, we'll submit the annual report to the legislature. So a few points here you can see, well, faintly. There's a dotted vertical line where the annual report is due, which is after the January committee, as Jamie articulated. And then in early October, before the meeting, we will submit fund reconciliation data to the Department of Finance that we will then share in the commission meeting in October. So even though First Five California doesn't rely on general fund appropriation, this proposed timeline has the benefit of aligning with the state budget cycle. So when we go into each of those quarterly commission meetings, we'll have that information to share or discuss. So yes,
May I ask a question?
absolutely.
Through the chair? On that point, we'll still continue our process of reviewing our budget in the spring, approving a budget before the start of the fiscal year. Before the start of the, right, are we on fiscal or calendar? Fiscal.
Yeah,
That won't change that, right?
it shouldn't, it's just a matter of which commission meeting we would choose to do that. So if we wanted to do in spring, obviously we could
May.
choose May to do so, or if we wanted to do it much earlier than that and do it in October, the prior calendar year.
Okay.
So however it meets the needs of the commission, I would say. Jackie, did you want to say something?
Oh, thank you.
Got it. So in closing, there are potential outcomes that we see that that would happen, hopefully based on the recommended changes to both structures. And for those who can't see, a decrease in funding, a decrease in frequency of commission meetings, but still allow for streamlined agendas, increased meeting participation and availability, consistent utilization and communication of advisory committees, consideration of staff and commissioner time and resources, maintains the current number of advisory committees, and creates ample time between commission meetings to meet with advisory committees. At this point, I will send it back to Chair Albright for your commissioner discussion.
Thank you so much, and for all the work that you've done, and thinking about this recommendation. Appreciate the ability to work with you on it. I wanted to open up for discussion. I, as you know, am new to the commission, and so don't want to upset the apple cart. But when I think about meeting structure, and maybe you could take off this slide so we could see folks online. When I think about meetings and the work that we need to do, I spend a lot of time thinking about form follows function and what are the goals and objectives that we as a commission are trying to achieve, and does our meeting allow that to happen? And so those are the questions I have. And again, this is not for action, but for consideration in terms of how we go forward with our work. I know a great deal of work was spent last year, over the last several years. And so again, I don't want to change something that's working. And yet I wanted the opportunity for everyone to have a discussion, particularly with the impact of the new provisions of Bagley-Keene. I see Commissioner Majors raising your hand. So I'll turn it to you first and then open it up to those in the room. Thank you, Commissioner Majors.
Thank you so much, Chair Albright. I appreciate all the work that's been put into this. I know we're not taking action, but the more frequent meetings were challenging. And so I think that the structure, the way it's laid out, gives us the opportunity to really dive in. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about how we report out on advisory committee meetings, but I will say this, advisory committee meetings really give us an opportunity, and I think I'm on too, to really dig down and better understand. I think what we could do a better job of, and speaking to myself as a commissioner, is report out on that. So thank you for the work around this and for considering the more efficiency of our meetings. One question I do have is just I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing the quarterly state commission update during the off months between commission meetings. Is that an email? Is that a meeting? what is, what is the vehicle for that?
Maybe Mr. Marquez, if you could talk about that.
Sure, I think we were thinking, a summary of our activities may be similar to what we provide in an ED report. However, we are open to hearing what would be most beneficial to the commission. But it would be a digital copy, yes, that we would email and potentially post so the public can also see what it is that we're providing to you commissioners.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I just wanted the clarification.
Thank you. Again, those in the room and those that certainly had more experience on this commission, curious your thoughts about this.
I think we tested what we thought would be a better model. And I really appreciate the feedback of staff that there were some things that were beneficial, but that it isn't working exactly the way we had hoped. And I think really thinking about things, as Jamie mentioned, the idea was that we would have committee meetings before, in the morning and commission meetings in the afternoon, one would inform the other. Our hypothesis about that was wrong, right? And so I think it's okay to learn and do better. I do really appreciate this idea of the quarterly updates or the updates between meetings. I think that's really important because I think one of the things for me, and I think for other commissioners for a long time, has always been that we don't always know what's going on in between. That quarterly meetings are great, but you know enough, and there's so much time in between those meetings that it's hard to remember everything. So I really appreciate providing those updates, and I think let's think about what the best way is to provide that information to keep everyone in the loop.
Thank you.
Not touching it. I like this, I think.
For the IT department.
Oh, thank goodness, because I'm not. I would at future time maybe talk about, and I look forward to recommendations from the executive committee in terms of what those quarterly updates are. I'm finding a balance between making sure we're keeping ourselves informed, but not creating extra work for staff as well is important to me. With all of our advisory committees going back to non-Bagley Keene requirements, how will we assure that the public has an opportunity to weigh in on recommendations that are being made by the staff and then by those advisory committees to this board prior to there being an action that's presented to us?
So in discussion with staff, we still want to form.
Sorry.
IT, not mechanical engineering. Clearly. So, okay, that we will still follow information and action so that there is a public vetting of anything that comes before the board. There is an intentionality with staff to reach out and work with association of other counties as they have with Impact Legacy as a model, as PCFA as yet another model of really that active dialogue of our current contract managers of engaging the counties. So, but in terms of the public process that where you all hear is that again, that information action is done with intentionality, which means that now that instead of the 6th, we have to be super intentional that we're going quarterly, that we are actually future planning, if you will, 6 months ahead, right? So that we're doing a quarterly 6 months, we're doing the input and then.
Thank you so much. Any other? Yes.
I would just like to add that I really appreciated this trip down here and interacting with all of you. And so far, I mean, most of my commission meetings have been virtual, just when I came on board. But this is by far my favorite commission meeting, just the days of interacting, and just you can't beat that personal interaction. So at least twice out of those 4, if we can visit counties like this and be hosted like this, it's been a pleasure, and I'm very excited.
Thank you, Commissioner Rizzo. I completely agree with you on that. Any other comments? I do want to open up, I mean, obviously I would to open this up to the public, but I really do want to open this up to the public. Again, this is an informational item. We'll talk about it and consider the approval at our next meeting. But as we do this, we definitely want to stay transparent and open on our work. I think that's critically important. And I think this could be a consequence of that. I think we have to think through that. So I don't know if any member of the public or the association wants to say anything now or think about it, but I'm sure that the director is open to that conversation. Thank you so much.
Wait. See me on another item. Okay, Francine Rod, First Five Monterey County Executive Director, and I do have some wonderings about this because, and I feel for you all, obviously having to do the Brown Act in our home county as well, and all of the changes. And I need to go back now and make sure they're not doing the same thing for the Brown Act. Okay, else know that they're not. Okay, so I'm just wondering, as you said, how is it that there is going to be enough opportunity for input from the counties, from the association, from others who might have input on these items? I know that the opportunity to be able to go in depth in the committee meetings is really important. And then if you end up going that way, that maybe these meetings will need to be longer so that there is really much more of a fuller report out from each of the committees and a real opportunity for input from the public at these meetings. If you go that way in terms of having much more dialogue back and forth about the items that you discuss, because they are really important to us. The Public Education and Outreach Advisory Committee and the program and evaluation work that's going to be happening. We would love to be much more in dialogue, especially now, because we're talking about the decline in funding and the need to really work together collaboratively. So just some wonderings in that. And it does feel a little ironic that Bagley King is supposed to be opening up communication and public input, and we're kind of figuring out ways to. So, you know, that is something that also is a wonder. And I totally get from staff's perspective, and your guys' perspective of needing to travel to have a quorum in one place, how challenging that can be. So my heart is with you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further comment, we're going to move to the regular, regular agenda item. This is for action. The protocol for action items includes staff presentation, questions from the State Commission, public comment, deliberation, and voting by the State Commission. There will be 3 minutes per person time during public comment. And so I'll open it up to item number 7 on the media campaign. I'd like to welcome Jamie and Collins Lopez, First Five California Public Communications Advisor, to present the media campaign item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me today. I just want to make sure everyone can see the screen.
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay, so at the previous commission meeting, staff provided an update on the current media campaign and also informed the commission that the public education and outreach media contract will be expiring in June of 2024. As well, we provided an overview of the RFP process for this contract. Today, staff will be making a request for funding for the next contract effort. Staff is recommending that the commission approve up to $57 million for the mass media account, from the mass media account, for a 3-year media contract. This will be designed to reach California's diverse population, educate all California parents and caregivers about the healthy development of children prenatal to age 5, and to also continue our current campaign on adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress. To give a little history, one of First Five California's statutory requirements is to develop a media campaign to effectively disseminate information to target audiences throughout the state. Since 2000, First Five California has been producing public education and outreach campaigns to highlight messaging around selected focus areas. In 2014, we made a large investment of $68 million to produce the Talk, Read, Sing campaign. And again, in 2018, the commission extended this investment with another $60 million. Oops. In 2019, a study from the UCLA Center for Health Policy Research affirmed that the reach and impact of the First Five California's Talk, Read, Sing social marketing campaign and branding First Five California as a recognized and trusted source for future messaging efforts. The Health Policy Brief reported that 87% of parents of children prenatal through 5 years of age recognized the messages of the Talk, Read, Sing campaign. Then in 2020, the commission approved $67 million to design, implement a new public education and outreach effort focusing on adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress. The winning bid for this contract was just over $55 million. We are making sure that the media campaign the early adversity, we see that the campaign is a significant investment in educating and informing caregivers of the importance of addressing toxic stress early to help ensure healthier outcomes. As quoted here, adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. And we're making sure that the media campaign goals and activities of the Stronger Starts campaign is closely aligned to First Five California's audacious goals, that in a generation, all children 0 to 5 will have the safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary to achieve healthy development. For this campaign, by learning about SSNREs in a simple, actionable, and memorable way, parents can help children through adversities and buffer against toxic stress response. We'll be using the core messaging points of be calm, be steady, be there, and be nurturing. The goals of this campaign effort, in this next contract, we are setting these specific goals and areas of focus for our outreach methodology. Using the contractor's expertise in reaching culturally diverse populations through market analysis reports and community partner engagement and partnerships, the campaigns will find new ways connecting with target populations throughout the state. As you see here, these are a list of some of our core target audiences. In addition to these target audiences, the contract will require that the following areas of focus are also achieved. Experience, ability to identify and reach our target audiences. Alignment, the ability to align our messaging to the First Five California strategic plan, audacious goals, and North Star statement. Research, ability to conduct and utilize market research to ensure accuracy of the message that we are reaching and that we are reaching our target audience. And branding, which is highlighting First Five brand as a reliable and reputable source of information. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Additionally, there is an appendix to this presentation that will highlight the campaign efforts as well as our timeline. So please feel free to review that for more in-depth information.
Thank you so much. What a powerful effort that you're doing and the entire team is doing. I know Commissioner Majors and I both heard a lot about this in the PEO committee. Commissioner Majors, I wanted to give you that opportunity to share your thoughts before we open it up to the full commission for any questions.
Sure. Yeah, we had an opportunity. We asked a lot of questions that you all might be thinking. I don't necessarily have the answers for all of them just because we spent a lot of time, but really what we wanted to understand was one, the major concept of this Stronger Starts campaign. around toxic stress. And you know, while toxic stress is sort of the word that we're all using now, we really wanted to understand that what the campaign was going to do was really intentional, that it was with a goal of making an impact, not that it was, you know, sort of putting some words out there, and some concepts, but that we wouldn't leave parents, which was always my biggest concern, that we wouldn't be leaving parents or providers or us, as practitioners sort of on this ledge of, okay, now that we've opened up this wound of toxic stress, what do we do about it? And so we asked a lot of those questions, and I think they were very thoughtful. I think the team heard us, and we gave them food to think about that. I think in terms of the dollar amount, you know, a big dollar amount, but understanding that to have sort of move public will, and, you know, move the way people think, knowing that we're not going to have these kinds of revenues forever. You know, what kind of impact could we make in this 3 years to really get people thinking, get the Californians thinking about how we better or create better environments for our young children and be cognizant of the toxic stress. So, I mean, she spoke so much better than me, but I just want to say that we really thought a lot about it, as well as the funding around it. And so thank you, Jamie, and Chair, for promoting this.
Thank you.
And thank you for your leadership. I just wanted to open up to my fellow commissioners. Any questions, comments, thoughts before we ask for a motion?
I have a question and a comment, and my question may be a future question given Commissioner Major's comments just now. I was curious about how potentially some of the learnings from the current campaign, particularly as we understand the impact of the current campaign and what gaps it might leave, or where we see, hey, there's more work to do, how that might inform the future campaign, and just knowing that also at the same time you have to structure an RFP in a way that's specific to the work that you want done, but that we may actually be learning along the way before that gets set into motion. So maybe that's not something that we answered today, and it sounds like maybe the advisory committee dove into that, but if there was any insights or thoughts or reflections on that, I welcome that. And then secondly, I just wanted to comment that really appreciate the joint conversations and partnership that's been happening between First Five California and some of our departments in the California Health and Human Services Agency related to the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative and several public awareness campaigns that we have. And so I really hope that we can continue to deepen that effort. Because there are several campaigns happening simultaneously. And so really thinking about, I know we are thinking very much about when you have several campaigns going, how do you make sure they're not each isolated, but they actually build on each other in a way that the more people hear those messages, they're actually very synergistic for both youth and families. So welcome the opportunity to continue to deepen that effort together.
Thank you. Actually, staff can answer. There are a couple of appendices, but I'll turn it over to Sarah and Jamie.
I can help in terms of, you know, how we will use what we've learned in this campaign going forward into the next 3 years. At the end, and will be next spring, we will be doing a comprehensive evaluation of this campaign. And so we'll be using a lot of that information to help guide us for, you know, what is known and what still needs to be known, who's been reached and who else we need to reach. So that will definitely be something we will utilize once the new contract is in place, using that information to see where we need to enhance our messaging and maybe who we need to be reaching better.
And if I could just add that one of the questions we asked in the advisory committee was, how do you tell the story of the bridge, right? We've already been doing some work in this, and now is this just separate? Is this just kind of the new flavor of the month? And so it's not. It really is about building on what has already been done and a lot of the data that has come out of some of our first efforts and other people's efforts, other projects' efforts. But we felt it was important to say, okay, but we're just the users, right? Like we're the consumers of the information. So we wanted to make sure the team knew that we wanted to teach us what's the bridge? You know, like how do we get from, you know, Dragon Song to here and from some of our early task force to where we're going now. So that was a question that the team took back.
Sorry, again, you had responses.
Good afternoon, Sarah Batches, Deputy Director of External Governmental Affairs. Thank you so much for that question in particular. We're trying as staff to also triage how we process our information and distribute not only the research data that we're gathering in real time. We're currently working with the Office of the Surgeon General as they're building out their ACEs campaign. It's something that Vice Chair Hazen one had acknowledged, and also we want to ensure that we're lifting. How are we working with our sister agencies? So as they're working on their campaigns, we've been sharing a lot of our data findings so that instead of creating duplication of efforts or not using the appropriate language, that's something that Commissioner Majors has, brings back from her own focus groups of making sure that we're using the appropriate languages for our communities that we're trying to reach. We're also partnering with the Office of the Community Partnerships and Strategic Communications under the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. And so that has given us access to so many more communities. And we've brought alongside of us the First Five Association, because what we've recognized is together, we can then make sure that our reach is statewide. And then as Jamie Ann and I begin to do presentations, we're beginning with Head Start. So in tying back to what Commissioner Majors was saying, how are we being intentional of not just making sure this information goes to parents and caregivers, but then the secondary layers of who are the school, administrators, educators, and then providers, and then finding the new opportunities to scale that up. This is a new campaign. We're only on year one and we've launched in the spring. And many of our overall evaluation will take place in the spring. So we'll bring back all of the data findings. But we think that in the last year and a half of this first 3-year commitment, we're the first agency to do an ACEs toxic stress campaign. And it's been just a wonderful privilege of making sure that we focus first on families and communities in building out what we heard earlier through our presentation of a whole family, whole childhood community concept. I think this is one where First Time California can be a connector in making sure that as we continue the evolution of this campaign, that we're bringing along all of our other partners.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions or feedback? Yes.
Got a few. So just a quick question on the appendix at the end that describes the research approach to stronger starts. It's not clear to me. Does the darkened area, does that mean that's what's been completed? Because the dates at the top have all happened. Has this entire piece of work been completed? That's not, wasn't clear to me.
Yes.
Maybe with the slides that everyone's clear what I'm talking about.
And that's slide 12.
Yes, thank you.
Is that visible?
Yes.
Yeah, so in 2021, when the contract was awarded, that's when we began the literature reviews, and into 2022, a lot of the research was done. Also during 2022, we were developing our bridge campaign, and this was our transition from Talk, Read, Sing to move into this area of toxic stress, and so that was our Dragon Breathing song. That is still carrying over into the current Stronger Starts campaign. But yes, we did spend quite a bit of time in 2021, 2022 doing literature reviews and research, and that part has been completed.
So is everything through the red flag testing?
Yeah,
that all complete?
That's complete. Yes, all complete. And that's what led us to being able to launch in the spring of 2023.
Got it. Sorry, the shading was throwing me off.
I'm sorry.
Wait, I did or didn't. So thank you for clarifying. It's one of my big questions around a $57 million investment as we look at declining revenues and we think about the importance of sustainability. And I don't know if this came up at committee meeting or staff had thought about this. Are we able to sustain this work at this level or some level close to this after this 3-year campaign? Or by approving this, are we saying we're gonna spend a lot now, and 3-ish years from now, it's going to go way down. And I guess the reason I asked the question is, does it make sense to spend a little bit less now so that we have more later?
Jamie, is prepared to answer that.
Yeah, so you know, we can certainly consider, you know, a reduction. Obviously, with a reduction, you're looking at you know, reduced media buys, you're looking at possibly less of a reach. And so I think those are, you know, important considerations. Your larger investment gets you more for your money, and as well as the added value that comes with those larger buys. But again, if you noticed that when we approve a certain amount of money, that bidding comes in usually a lot less than that. That's part of the bidding process. And so I would say when we say up to 57 million, it could be significantly less than that as far as the investment goes. But I would say that when we're looking at for the next, you know, 3 years from now, is it going to continue to be the Stronger Starts campaign? Is it going to be a new campaign? So those are all things that I think are considerations to keep in mind when contemplating the decision.
I guess what I'm asking is, so by saying yes to this amount today, are we saying less to significantly less after this? Do we have a sense of, you know, based on, you know, our best guess about what fund balances will look like 4 years from now, how much we'll have to spend? Because I hear you saying the more we can spend today, the more we can do today. But as we all think about the long term, by saying yes today, are we saying no to something important tomorrow?
Right. Is that a fiscal question? Maybe.
Yeah. I'd love to just say what the questions we ask in the advisory committee. And again, maybe this is where we do a better job of trying to communicate. So there's a comfort level that we did ask these questions. We had the conversation around building something. You know, we had Talk Read Sing for many years. Commissioner Hayes and you were part of that much longer than me. I came in at the tail end of it. And I'm not talking about the stats on it or the impact on it, but everybody knew it, right? Because it had taken years to develop and build. And so, you know, the understanding that we have, right? We all know this. It's not an elephant in the room. It's the one we know, which is revenue is declining. But we don't want to shortchange the development and the building of a strong campaign and communication that, again, is to move people. You know, for the purpose of having, you know, making sure we keep, you know, a consistent flow of money for the subsequent years. And so what we asked was just, what's the strategy, right? Because we're not the practitioners of this media campaign. I'm certainly not the expert. I don't think most of us are. But how do we, what's the pedagogy? Like, how do you start to scaffold and build this? And is more money built on then? If you've built a house, you know, the major money isn't needed in the very beginning, it's needed in the middle, but that might not be this. And so we did ask the question. So again, Jamie, I don't know that you can have a perfect answer today, but that may be the consequence, Commissioner Hayes, and is that we would think about what that strategy would look like and where would be the important place in this timeline of a successful campaign to invest the most resources.
Can I also add to staff, and I need to underscore this, is that we launched the actual campaign in March. And what we need to underscore from what Commissioner Major said, Talk Read Sing with message aside, people have different opinions about it, is that it took 7 years for it to build a brand and the brand awareness of what Talk Read Sing is. And so it is important right now for it to invest for that continuity of investment and research and practice around Stronger Starts. As we've learned from our history and our evaluation of what we do with Talk Read Sing, we want a similar impact, if you will, with Stronger Starts, because that was the direction of the commission to really dig deep into full child, full family, toxic stress, and aligning with other messages. So for us and staff, like you'll poke me if I'm speaking out of pocket, but really just they poured their heart and soul into this, and we are literally just, and we just, so it's important that the 57 million to continue, it will like, the bid will likely come in small bets, as most of our bids do when we put an RFP out, for various reasons. So there's an intentionality with that. It's actually less than what we asked 3 years ago as well. So you're slowly seeing, and then we get to become more intentional 3 years from now. And, you know, again, with our financial update, it is that if we don't have enough money, or even in this, we have caveats, right? To reduce the funding. However, in the out years, from what we understand, even with declining revenue, it still will be a significant investment that and we talked as staff around this, about the same amount, but then we have to be more intentional. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the challenge for me is, I mean, exactly to your point, right, which is, I think we all believe, well, I'll speak for myself, believe in stronger starts. And so the question is not, do we not do that campaign, but we want that campaign to be successful, recognizing we're essentially in year one and we need 7-10 years to do it, to achieve what we believe it has the potential to achieve. Are we shortchanging that effort by spending close to $60 million now? If it means, I guess for me, what is the long-term plan? Recognizing this is more than a 3-year campaign, ideally, what does that long-term look like? And are the dollars we believe are available after this 3-year period sufficient to do what we want this campaign to do? And so that's not at all clear to me.
I would say that staff, and Jimmy has been through several of our campaigns, has given that a lot of thought with every media campaign, and staff will not bring forward proposals that they don't think will have, are strategic and intentional and have that.
One thing that I did want to mention is that because we're just emerging out of the pandemic, ACEs and toxic stress and behavioral health are critical issues in this time frame. We don't know that in 3 years from now, it will be the hot topic. But because we're still emerging from the effects of the pandemic, we recognize the critical need as everyone in state government, in local government, we're all focusing on this direction. And so we recognize that doing the mass investment that is being proposed before you does sound not, you know, how do you look at something and then 10 years out? But because we don't know that in 6 years total, that hopefully ACEs and toxic stress is something that we can actually start seeing behavioral change. We would hope that in that end period, we are still not at this point, that we've actually seen behavioral change begin to take effect because of all of our sister agencies walking the same line at the same time in making this a critical issue today, so that we could start seeing the reforms and changes in the next 3 to 5 years, so that we can start seeing the next generation of children not be affected, not seeing the high developmental screening needs, the high assessment for family support that we're seeing in this moment. So we recognize those factors, but we also don't know if that in 3 years from now, we would think that ACEs and toxic stress is the big critical topic. So because of this being a top issue, fitting into the behavioral the health model, that's why we believe that doing a large investment as we scale up this effort makes the most sense at this time.
Thank you. Any other comments, feedback?
And I think if it's helpful, with a large investment up front, you kind of establish a message, and even if you pull back a little bit later, you've already kind of created that foundational message and kind of had a more widespread reception to that. You've developed a lot of your creative, you've invested in that piece as well that you can use for years to come. So that is kind of supportive material that you can carry through into those next 3 years.
Thank you. Any members of the, did you have a question?
No, I was ready to move.
Before you move, thank you so much. I'm going to take that as a motion, but before you do, let me just open it up to see if any members of the public have any comment.
Right.
We do. Thank you very much. So same rules, 3 minutes per person. Thanks very much.
Again, Wendy went first 5 San Luis Obispo County. I wasn't anticipating on commenting on this item, but I just wanted to go back to a comment that Fabiola made in her presentation earlier, that when First 5 California mobilizes campaigns, people at the local level associate those campaigns with the locals. So, and then again, to quote Commissioner Stafford Jones, please, 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 at all times, find ways to partner with local First Fives as these statewide campaigns roll out, because we can be the wind beneath your wings. We can amplify that message, but it helps us to know and partner and be able to riff off of those statewide messaging campaigns. Talk, Read, Sing in San Luis Obispo County continues to have lift and impact and community buy-in. And so with these ensuing campaigns, I just urge First 5 California to recognize the First 5 counties, all 58 of us, as your primary partners in getting the message out and delivering it to our families and children. Thanks.
Thank you.
I promise I heard I didn't talk before getting up here. I wanted to stress to you what Wendy shared. And I guess a call to the staff and to all of you, if this is such a big campaign, you must use us, because we lean on you and we want to make sure that the message is the same. And so don't forget to have one of the strategies in this campaign as it moves forward and is approved to be connecting with the First 5 Commission, so that we do what Wendy beautifully stated in terms of supporting the message. My other point is, I think, Jackie, you mentioned we are here to leverage, and leverage is what you keep hearing, right? And I heard Commissioner, ex officio member Stafford Jones talk about other agencies, and I wanna say that this is a critical opportunity to do that. Like, don't have First 5 California do this alone when you have other entities that are doing campaigns. Nobody wants to duplicate. We don't want to duplicate locally. You certainly don't want to duplicate statewide. So I would really hope that you, at least staff, you think of ways that you will manage to make sure that the leveraging other work statewide, other campaigns that are being received and seen. If anybody knows anything about First 5, they'll know those billboards, they'll know those commercials. And so if the message is coming across from different entities, the better. And my last point is I'm not clear, and maybe you all are, and I didn't see the report, but what would success look like in 3 years? What happens? People know about toxic stress. People know that you have to breathe and stop. And Talk, Read, Sing was talk, read, sing. You knew, and people still know what in the first 5 years you stop and you do those 3 things, and you're setting up your child for success. I would encourage you guys to be thoughtful and to land on something easy that we all could be like, yes, this is what the campaign is about. This is what we'll know and what we'll stress. And I think someone mentioned the next generation of children wouldn't have to face this. It's important for all of us to be clear on that. So just be mindful of that.
Again, Commissioners, Abu Mekdes in the First 5 Association. I just want to +1 everything that Fabiola and Wendy mentioned and put a finer point on something that we, as a network, have done a great job led by First 5 Commission on raising the profile of First 5s throughout the state. There's a double edge to that in terms of community expectations also going up in terms of services and calls that First 5s get. So to Wendy's earlier point, when folks hear First 5, they think First 5 slow in their own community. And so that as sustainability discussions happen and reduced services, know that that's a tangible example of why I think counties and the commission should work together on these messages and how it's rolled out, especially when it's about reaching hard to reach populations as the staff noted. So just a +1 there for that emphasis. The other thing I wanted to ask is if staff has any evidence around how mass media campaigns do reduce ACEs, and if we are creating that as a state and leading the nation on that, that's awesome too. So, but if there is any existing evidence, we would love to see it and also promote it throughout our communities throughout the state. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, yes, please.
Clarissa Ravella, First 5 Kings. As I'm hearing this, the one thing that I'm wondering is there were the ACEs Award grants, and how is this work piggybacking off of that? Perhaps some of the first fives here were involved in those grants, so just making sure that we're not reinventing the wheel. Everybody's worked so hard and there's existing structures probably within communities that have already started this work. So just reminding folks that that did exist and the work continues.
Thank you so much. And I think we have some folks on the line.
The first one is Marianne Henson. After that is Wendy Sims.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you so much for this thoughtful and intentional conversation. My name is Mary Ann Hansen, and I'm from First Five Humboldt. And I also want to give a shout out and a thank you to Jamie for her phenomenal partnership with counties. She has been so helpful when we've reached out to her to be able to actively lift up and bring added value to your work. For those of you who don't know me, I was lucky enough to represent the association on the Surgeon General's trauma-informed primary care work group through 2022 and co-chaired their Network of Care Advisory Committee. Many counties, as my fellow ED just mentioned, received ACEs Aware grants to do ACEs and toxic stress messaging locally. We have been talking about SSNREs locally and elevating those positive messages about what people can do. In fact, to Commissioner Major's point about what parents can do, there's a billboard just a block from our First Five office, which says essentially in its entirety, toxic stress harms children. And it's missing that next piece that you guys are now talking about, which is what communities can do and what parents can do to change that equation, right? Your number is not your destiny, all of those things, right? We have to focus on those positive things that we can do. And we are ready, as my fellow EDs have said, to partner with you. The association is ready to help you contact and connect with those target populations, to support your media, to provide input on your drafts as you work on this next campaign, because I just have to say, we are so looking forward to this next step in messaging so that we're putting tools and messages in the community's hands and parents' hands about what they can do for their children. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And I think we have one more member of the public.
Yes, good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Wendy Sims Moten, Executive Director for First Five Santa Barbara. Thank you for this very important conversation. And I would just add to what my colleagues have said, how important it is to work locally with these counties and to keep our message simple, and it creates continuity. We talked about it earlier about making sure, now our outside dollars are really a lot of more of our dollars, as our dollars are declining. We really are extending out to partnerships. And it's really important for, as we know, those who may not necessarily be in it like we are, but to be able to say, talk, read, sing, I've been able to really get that message across, in terms of looking at potential funders, private funders, looking at even legislators as they're looking at funding, how critical is it that early care. So it's so critical to be able to have those public service announcements that really reach folks who are not in the day-to-day about early care and education, but yet they know how important it is, how it impacts their environments that they're not necessarily in it. So I just want to reiterate how important it is to work with the local commissions. And we got a simple message about it. Everybody else is talk, read, sing. They say it to this day, and it really helps to do that. So I think as we're continuing to move forward and in a different environment where we're going to have to reach out to other partners, our campaigns are going to be critical to that success. So thank you again for discussing this.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public on the phone? Okay, thank you so much. If I could call for a motion to move to approve a $57 million budget item from mass media account for a 3-year media campaign contract, provided the resources are available and the resulting contract includes a 30-day cancellation clause. I think that I move. Thank you very much, Commissioner Jimenez. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Majors. Any other discussion?
I just wanted to offer offer two clarifications. So one is that, I mentioned there has been partnership between the Children Youth Behavioral Health Initiative and First Five California. So for example, Children Youth Behavioral Health Initiative also includes an ACEs and Toxic Stress campaign of the Office of the Surgeon General. And for a variety of reasons, including ongoing conversations with First Five California, Office of the Surgeon General, the primary audience for that campaign is going to be youth ages 16 to 25. So it's intentionally meant to not be duplicative, but to actually be synergistic, because another element of that campaign is also many 16 to 25-year-olds are our next generation of parents. And so really helping to support them and think about how might that campaign be part of the effort to break the cycle around ACEs and toxic stress. So I think there are some really great opportunities to think about, as several people noted, like how those puzzle pieces fit together. And then the other piece, just to share something that we are doing in two other campaigns we have in the Children Youth Behavioral Health Initiative is, as part of the efforts of these campaigns, as was described here, to really center equity, is actually having an explicit component of the campaign that is working with and actually funding community-based organizations to both help shape the message, but also deploy the message. So really bringing in that that partnership element that I think we heard described. So happy to share lessons learned about from the work that's happening under those two campaigns, which are not fully launched yet, but a little bit further in.
Thank you so much. If I could ask Jamie to call the roll on this motion in a second.
Katie Albright.
Aye.
Dana Hazen.
Aye.
Elsa Jimenez.
Aye.
Jackie Majors.
Approved.
Vivian Velasco Paz.
Aye.
Lori Russo.
Aye. Thank you, the motion carries. Appreciate everyone's work on this. It's not talk, read, and sing, but if we could stretch, breathe, and smile in terms of taking trauma-informed approach to our work, just a couple seconds, like, let's take a break before the next one. So. Something I'm committed to try to do is have a little bit of a trauma-informed break or start the meeting. So again, I'm not in love with stretch, breathe, smile, but we'll have to come up with something better. Yeah, it was not, but I appreciated it. So we have one more item on the open agenda, on the public agenda. It's our kit for new parents. I'd like to welcome Bernetta, SciFac's First Five Information Officer, to present the new kit for parents program. And then after, we are going to go into a short closed session. I know several people have to get on the road, so I want to make sure that we're efficient in the conversation. So Bernetta, we'll turn it over to you. And this is an action.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon. I can't seem to turn on my video. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are requesting up to $15 million from the unallocated account to fund the development, fulfillment, and marketing of the updated kit for new parents for fiscal years 2024-25 through 2026-27. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do this quickly. We have online, I wanted to present some information from our KIT study, and we have Heather Quick who is a managing researcher at AIR, American Institutes for Research, and I would like her to present some information about the KIT study that informs what we're planning to do with the KIT if the commission grants funding, grants our request for funding. So I would like to turn it over to Heather, and thank you very much for being here, Heather, to present your item.
Yep, I'm just going to share my screen. I hope that's the right one. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Bernetta. And I will go through this quickly as well, because I know we're short on time, but I'm happy to share some of the initial results from the ongoing Kit for New Parents study that we at AIR are conducting in collaboration with our partners at Social Policy Research Associates and Alan Shea and Associates. So just before I dig into the results, just want to give you just a really super quick high level overview of the purpose of this study. The overall aim is to improve the kit's reach across the state and its impact on families. And there are three overarching goals. The first is to understand the effectiveness of the kit distribution. The second is to understand parent and caregiver experiences with the kit. What do they think about it? How do they use it? And the third is to identify outcomes for parents, caregivers, families that are associated with receiving the kit. And we've designed 3 studies to address each of these questions. And you can see there that we have a range of data collection activities that support our understanding and gather information to address those goals. And I'm happy to answer questions along the way. I'm gonna primarily focus on results from the kit distribution study, given sort of where we are in the process. And I want to highlight three broad questions. First, who distributes the kit? We know that based on data from the from shipping records from the kit fulfillment contractor, ALOM, who's been so helpful with us, helping us with this study. In 2021-22, more than 83,000 kits were distributed across the 52 counties. But distribution of those kits was uneven across counties, with some counties here shown in darker blue, with higher rates of distribution as a percentage of births in each county compared to others. So different things going on in different counties. Most of the kits are sent to local agencies, especially health services organizations like hospitals, and they then distribute those kits to families. So who receives the kits? Agencies that distribute the kits reported that they do a pretty good job at reaching low-income families and those that speak languages other than English. And we find that based on data from the California Health Interview Survey, that that's borne out. So 22% of families with a child birth to 5 living in poverty reported receiving a kit compared to 9%.
Heather, I am so very sorry, and I apologize completely for this. We're going to have to cut this short.
Okay.
Fortunately, and we will be able to present this later. And I so appreciate you coming in, but we have to get to the ask because time is running short. So apologies to you. I very much apologize to you. So we will bring you back and have you go through the full complement of the study. Thank you so much. Just to get back to the ask for the kit for new parents, again, we are requesting approval of up to $15 million from the unallocated account to fund the development, fulfillment, and marketing of the updated kit for new parents for fiscal years 2024-25 through 2026-27.
Hi, Bernard. I think we had some miscommunication. We're happy to finish the next 3 slides of the AIR, but just a few minutes if that's okay. If Heather's done.
If Heather would, Heather, I am so sorry, Heather. If you would complete and I'm sorry, it is miscommunication, and I take full responsibility for it. So
No.
Go ahead.
Totally fine. Let me just get the slide back up. And I will totally zip right through then and cut to the chase a little bit here. Because I think there are some important implications for thinking about funding going forward. I will just say that kits are getting out there. We're still looking at the data, but there are some promising results around the distribution. Kits are getting to families, and there is often some one-on-one conversation with families about the kits. There are 2 parent-related books in the kit and 2 children's books, and those books seem to be most often highlighted as super valuable. And the What to Do When Your Child Gets Sick book in particular, but also the Parent Guide and the Numbers Touch and Feel book were also appreciated. And some preliminary support from parents as well. We're deep in the analysis there, but you can see there's a quote there for a parent who really appreciated the kid. But I think there are some opportunities to improve, especially the distribution of the kit, expanding the promotion of the kit to increase that distribution. Most agencies learn about the kit through the First Five website. And so more direct social media outreach and advertisement could be helpful. Families have limited awareness. There's some opportunity to clarify and streamline the kit ordering process, and some more training for agencies to distribute the kits, how to outreach to parents, I think could be helpful as well, based on what we're hearing from agencies. So that's really the crux of it. I'll just say that the results are sort of preliminary, and we're still working on analyzing the data, and we'll be able to say more about kit distribution at the end of the year, more about parent experiences in March, and more about family outcomes in June of 2024. So that's the sum total. I'm happy to answer questions, but I understand if we need to switch. Here's my contact information, also a link to our study website for more information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
So to get to our ask, we are requesting approval of up to $15 million from the unallocated account to fund the development, fulfillment, and marketing of the updated kit for new parents for fiscal years 2024-25 through 2026-27. And I just wanted to add that the kit for new parents, in my point of view, is a worthwhile program. The partnerships we've had with counties and organizations throughout the years have been so valuable to the parents of California. And it's been for my experience, and I'm just going to say this as a longtime state employee, it has been a privilege to work on this program. And I'll close with that.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be able to work with you on this program. We're grateful. I wanted to open it up to Commissioner Majors. This did go to the PEO committee, and Commissioner Majors, any comments or thoughts?
I think they did a fine job. I think we know the importance of these kits. So in respect to time, I will just let you guys go to questions.
Thank you so much. Any comments or questions, feedback from members of the commission?
I'm sorry if I missed it, but aside from English and Spanish, are they created in other languages?
They're in Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese as well.
And then I presume we rely on our local First Five county commissions to help with distribution?
Yes, they are our most important partners in distribution. They have been from the very beginning, and they distribute the most kits on behalf of the program with their partnerships with the local hospitals, agencies, and so forth, home visiting programs. And they're really the ones on the ground getting the word out about the kit.
Thank you. Any other comments, feedback, or questions?
I have just a comment. At a time in 2023, when you go to the grocery store and you're shocked at your total or the gas tanks, when I'm looking at the historical funding, all the way back to 2001, hasn't been inflation on this cost. In fact, we're funding less because for the same amount of supply. So I find that
we have had to, we adjust throughout the years, different levels of funding. And the kit started out as a very large box, and we've shrunk it down throughout the years. We've refined some of the items, made it lighter because the shipping costs, that's part of it. So we adjust to what our funding is.
makes sense.
We also receive a federal reimbursement for the kit now that we didn't.
Yes, we do. We've had that agreement in place since the beginning of the program. It's been an ongoing agreement with the Department of Healthcare Services.
Thank you. Any other Yes, Commissioner.
I'm wondering if we've thought about how we can ensure that messaging from the campaign that we just talked about can be or will be infused in the kit. I think as we talk about leverage and opportunities to connect with our audiences, parents in particular, making sure that all of the ways we're communicating with them, that the campaign messages come through. I don't know if that's something that have we done that before, maybe with Top Read Sing or?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, we have. And so some of our kids had the Top Read Sing logos. And so as we're evolving, we now have a Stronger Starts bag that has the roar the dragon. And we have materials that we place inside about what the new Stronger Starts campaign is. But because we're still under this current contract, the contents that are in the current kit have not yet been updated to include, and we're still in development of a Stronger Starts content that we're also developing. So we now hope that in a new iteration, after the evaluation, the full evaluation from AIR, we recognize what components need to be modernized, what can be streamlined to continue reducing our costs of distribution and supplies, and just how do you build the kit overall, and then recognizing how do we leverage our current campaign so it fits in alignment.
Great, thank you.
Terrific. Any other comments, feedback? I'll take comments from members of the public.
I just have one question, Fabiola, with First Five Fresno County. There was somewhere on the slide, Heather mentioned that the study is not going to be completed until the spring of 2004, right? And I'm wondering, and why is this before the commission now? And also I wanted to share with you that in full disclosure, First Five Fresno, we have not distributed this ourselves. We partner with hospitals to do this. But one of the main reasons is because we don't see families of direct services from the First 5-10 people like my team, we don't get to do that. And so we rely heavily on partners to make sure that they are accessing the kit and that it's relevant and that they have the staff to go through the items. It's something to be thoughtful about because it's just, it has to be in a way that is delivered to the parent at the right time, and not often hospitals may not be the right time. And we were part of the focus group and we shared some of that feedback. But I want you to know that yes, I know that some perspectives are heavily invested in the delivery, but some of us are trying to figure out ways to partner with others. But anyway, my first question, the reason why it's going.
Thank you.
I did not hear the first question. Unfortunately, the sound was a little.
The first question is why now, but at this point, we don't necessarily have to respond to that, but it also takes a full year plus. And we don't want to stop funding the kit and have a gap in service. Is the short answer.
Thanks, I'll make this really quick. I want to thank Renetta because she has really reached out to the counties to get feedback and input about the kit and that process, and so that's been wonderful. First Five in Monterey, we do have 52 local distribution partners that we work with. And one of the things I do want to point out is with the reduction in our funding now, we've seen a huge drop in the kit because we don't have a staff person or a consultant who can spend time related to working on the kit anymore. We had to prioritize different areas of focus. So as you're thinking about the funding for this, one other thing to potentially think about is in alignment with what Melissa Stafford Jones mentioned about on the ground, how the coordination can work. And when you're counting on the counties and the partners to do this work, how are we also resourcing the counties and the partners to be able to provide this? Because it's because of the training and the support that we were providing them, we went down 34% from fiscal year 2021 to 21-22 in terms of the number of kids that came out the door. Because we didn't have the resources to be able to put it with that right now.
Thank you so much.
We'll continue as Francine had shared, as Renetta talking to counties and your feedback, and intentionally the focus groups, and that will be incorporated in the next rollout of the kit.
Thank you so much. Any other member of the public online? Thank you. If I could, call for a motion, the motion would be to approve up to a $15 million, from the unallocated account to fund the development, fulfillment, and marketing of an updated kit for new parents for fiscal year 2024, 2025 through 26, 27, provided that the resources are available and the resulting contracts include a 30-day cancellation clause. Is there a motion?
I move.
Thank you so much. Is there a second?
One second.
Thank you so much. If I could ask Jamie to call the roll call vote, but before any additional comments? Okay, thank you, Jamie. Thanks for calling the roll call.
Katie Albright,
Yes.
Amy Hazen,
Aye.
Elsa Jimenez,
Aye.
Jackie Majors,
Aye.
Vivian Velasquez Hawes,
Aye.
Lori Russo.
Aye.
Thank you so much. The vote carries, and I'm grateful to everyone's thoughts and comments about it. We're gonna go into, we've completed our regular agenda. The commissioners are gonna go into a brief closed session and we'll come back to report out and adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. Hello, we're just gonna finish up our meeting. We have completed our closed session. And I'm just finding where I'm supposed to talk. We met in closed session, no action was taken. Our next regular commission meeting is currently scheduled for December 14th, 2023. We do not need a motion to adjourn, so I'm going to adjourn and thank the incredible team of First Five California for supporting this meeting and for the Fresno team for including us here today. We're grateful for it. Safe drive to those that journey. Yeah.